Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving into the technological revolution that's happening in Islamic financial compliance. We're talking about a massive shift from slow pen and paper processes to intelligent, automated systems built for the kind of speed we see in today's markets.
So to really get this, you have to understand the core challenge. The old way of doing things, with manual ledgers and quarterly reports, was always looking in the rear view. It was reactive, and it just couldn't keep up. The new way? It's a completely different ballgame. We're talking real-time algorithms and continuous monitoring. It's a proactive approach, and honestly, it's reshaping the entire landscape of financial oversight.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to walk through 5 key areas. First, the compliance revolution itself. Then, we'll peek inside the digital screening tools. We'll get into the weeds on why different standards can disagree, debate whether algorithms are a risk or a solution, and finally, wrap up with how Sharia compliance is actually being automated. So let's kick things off with the compliance revolution. Look, the central problem was simple. Traditional methods were just too slow for modern finance. And that gap? That created huge operational risk, which is a massive red flag for any financial institution. FinTech didn't just tweak the system, it offered a ground-up overhaul of Sharia oversight. Okay, on to our second section. Let's look inside the screening tools. These digital platforms were really the first wave of tech solutions here. They basically democratized access, allowing everyone from retail investors to huge institutions to check for Sharia compliance with just a few clicks.
You've basically got 3 major players in this space right now: Zoya, Musaffa, and Islamically. And as you can see, they're not all the same. They each target a different kind of user, from the everyday stock picker to large institutions. And they really set themselves apart with unique features and how they get their data.
First up, let's talk about Zoya. The best way to think of this one is as a super user-friendly quick check tool. It pulls its data from public SEC filings and it sticks exclusively to the AAOIFI standard. What's really notable is its very strict take on the 5% income impurity rule, and it has this handy built-in calculator for dividend purification, which is a nice touch. Next is Musaffa, and this one is really built for the deep researcher. I mean, its coverage is just vast. We're talking over 120,000 stocks from all over the world. Its big standout feature is that it can check a company against 5 major international standards and then give you a star rating. And this is critical for institutional players. Musaffa is an SEC-registered investment advisor. And finally, we have Islamically, which many see as the institutional gold standard. It's backed by a well-known advisory firm, Ratings Intelligence. Its whole methodology is designed for stability. See, it uses a 36-month average market cap, which is a clever way to fight what's called denominator volatility. That's when a stock's compliance status flips just because its share price took a nosedive. Now for our third section. This gets to a really critical question for any compliance officer. Why do these tools sometimes give you different answers for the exact same stock? Now, this isn't a data error. It all comes down to understanding the methodological differences between standards. And for any institution, getting your head around these differences is absolutely essential for creating a consistent, defensible compliance policy. So the whole thing boils down to this concept, ikhtilaf. This refers to the recognized, accepted diversity in scholarly opinion. So when you see these disagreements in financial screening, it's not a sign that the system is broken. It's actually a legitimate feature of Islamic jurisprudence. It's a feature, not a bug. Let's make this super concrete because this is a perfect example of what we're talking about. The AAOIFI standard might measure a company's debt against its market cap, its stock price times the number of shares. But the FTSE standard measures that same company's debt against its total assets. So you have the same company, the same amount of debt, but 2 different denominators. That can lead to 2 completely different compliance verdicts. And this brings us right to our 4th section. Now we're shifting gears a bit. We're moving beyond these passive screening tools and looking at the next step in the evolution: active, algorithm-driven investing. And of course, this raises a massive compliance question. Are these algorithms a new source of risk, or are they actually the ultimate solution? So let's frame the whole debate with this one central question. From a compliance point of view, the biggest worry is whether these black box algorithms, where you can't always see the internal logic, introduce a level of forbidden uncertainty into the whole investment process. This kind of forbidden uncertainty actually has a name: qardar. It means excessive ambiguity or risk in a transaction. Now, if you translate that into modern financial terms, what we're really talking about is mitigating counterparty risk and operational risk, things that every single compliance department is already laser-focused on. The other key concept to know is mazer, which is basically speculation or gambling. This prohibits any transaction where wealth is made purely by chance, instead of through productive, value-creating effort.
But here's the twist, and this might sound a bit counterintuitive at first. A strong argument can be made that well-governed algorithms reduce these risks. Think about it. Human trading is so often driven by emotion, that fear of missing out, or FOMO, which leads directly to the kind of short-term speculation that starts to look a lot like Macer. An algorithmic approach, on the other hand, is built on historical backtesting and deep analysis. It systematically removes that dangerous emotional element from the equation.
And that leads us perfectly into our final section, automating Sharia compliance. The big takeaway here is that far from being a risk, well-governed AI is actually an incredibly powerful tool for mitigating both financial and ethical risk.
So how do they actually do it? How do algorithms actively reduce that uncertainty, that gharar? Well, for starters, they're programmed with built-in Sharia constraints right from the get-go. They can automatically block prohibited trades like short selling or margin trading, provide continuous, real-time compliance reports, and even automate risk management with things like stop losses.
This slide shows the whole workflow perfectly. You can see the compliance is baked in at every single stage. First, you set the Sharia constraints as system rules. The system then actively blocks any prohibited trades. It can automate processes like dividend purification. And, most importantly for oversight, it ensures you have continuous, real-time reporting.
And this quote really just sums up the end result perfectly. The technology transforms the potentially chaotic and risky stock market into a highly disciplined, transparent process that fully aligns with the Islamic objective of preserving and growing wealth ethically. In other words, it's all about creating a much more controlled and compliant investment environment.
Which leaves us with one final big question to think about. If technology can automate the rules, the calculations, and the reporting, then is human emotion, with all its biases and impulses, actually the biggest compliance risk left in the system? That's a question that's going to shape the future of this entire industry.